Hello, my name is Samuel George London, and welcome to Comics for the Apocalypse. On today's episode, I speak to writer and one of the coolest people in comics, Dave Cook, about what comics he would take into the apocalypse. But before we get into it, I've got a couple of bits of news. First, my most recent Kickstarter, Beyond Milford Green, is now just over 90% funded with a week to go. So if you like the idea of Star Trek with a Victorian twist, be sure to check it out on Kickstarter by following signalcomics.com/beyond. And secondly, we've had our third 5-star review on iTunes, so thanks very much to Masculine666. If you do enjoy today's show, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe that it helps make other people aware of the show as well. Now, without further ado, on with the show. Hello, Dave Cook. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, mate. It's a real pleasure to have you on Comics for the Apocalypse. And just for the listeners, we actually kind of met last year at Thought Bubble. And I kind of bumped into you in the street. Because I came up to see numerous people, one of which was you, actually, and I went to your table, and you'd actually gone off somewhere. I think there was a note on your table, so I decided, right, I'm going to go see Charlie Adlard, basically, over at a Comixology tent. And then just as I was just about to kind of walk round to the entrance to the Comixology tent, you kind of, were right in the middle of the street, and I was like, Dave. Yeah, we had a good old chin wag then. But for anybody that isn't aware of what do you do in the world of comics?
Yeah, sure. I run a small label up in Edinburgh, which is called Card Shark Comics. Most known for the cyberpunk comic series Killtopia. I'm also a former video game journalist, marketing person. I've done all the dark art marketing jobs back in the day. And I'm now putting those to good use on Kickstarter, marketing the hell out of our crowdfunding. Yeah, very much so. It's a funny thing, right? Because a lot of people who I've never seen at a con before, they've never been to a Comic Con in their life, they'll come to their very first show and go, I've seen these books somewhere before. And I'm like, yes, the dirty marketing's working.
Brilliant. Yeah, Inception. Yeah. Brilliant. So for the listeners, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter. It's at Dave S. Cook, all one word. Or on Facebook, /Killtopia comic. It's probably the best place to find all of our stuff.
Yes. And I've got to say, Killtopia, you absolutely smashed it last year. In every aspect of Killtopia, the Kickstarter and the execution, and kind of when my package arrived, so many prints, I was just, dumbfounded. And then the comic itself was great. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's still crazy to us, right? Because myself and the artist Craig, we're very, shall we just say we're very humble people to a fault. Where we're genuinely surprised when people say they like it. Not that we don't like it. Just I think people giving us praise, and in our minds we just made the story we wanted to tell kind of thing, right? So when people say they like it, it sincerely blows our minds. This is holy. This is great. So thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate that.
It's quite all right. And Killtopia 2 is coming up, launching on March 1st.
So we hit Kickstarter. We're on that train again.
That's it, mate. Tell me about it.
It's funny because it was a year ago that we hit Kickstarter with the first issue, right? It doesn't feel like a year. It's just been. Yeah, totally, man. It's been I guess it's also when you live con to con and Kickstarter to Kickstarter, it sort of partitions the year a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we're deep in the final stages of planning things, making sure like all of our reward tiers are priced correctly, that our targets are fine, and just firming up some final stretch goal things. There's some really cool stuff that we won't reveal until we hit those goals. But yeah, there's some pretty big names getting involved, so that's quite cool.
Amazing. I'm very much looking forward to that. So, folks, I'm sure can kind of follow you on Twitter and Facebook and the like, and they'll hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, be warned, if you follow us, you're never going to hear the end of this comic, because we are such like rampant marketers. So I apologize in advance.
Well, I love it, and kind of the lead up to this, you've kind of been using your kaiju cola, basically, haven't you?
Yeah, like I think we already have the makings of what might be our third issue sort of viral thing, but yeah, we just figure like it's quite an expansive world we've built, and like there's lots of brands in there and like merchandise, and I think we've had so many comments since we started doing the kaiju cola thing. People just saying like, oh, we love what you're doing with the branding. It's like, it's almost like this little world you're building. And, you know, like I've said to many people before, you know, in the past, when people say, you know, about world building and, you know, what does it take to make a good comic? And it's like, well, you know, you need to have a world where, you know, you care if the world is in peril or not, you know, right? So, and I sort of look at that from a video game philosophy, where you look at the best video game worlds, you know, Rapture, City 17, the worlds themselves almost feel like a character, and that's something I've definitely tried to carry over from video games into comics, you know, is, you know, make the world tangible. So I think we've pushed that to the limit with this one, but yeah, it seems to be working, so that's cool.
Fantastic. And talking of world building, you're going to be going into an apocalypse, I'm afraid. And your random allocation, which is random, and for the listeners, the way that it works is that our guests send me a random number between 1 and 6, and then basically I roll a dice, and then I add those two numbers together, and then you're allocated a random apocalypse, and by some force of fate, you've been given a robot takeover, basically. So you've been put into this robot takeover, an artificial intelligence robot takeover. And so, what would be your action plan for this apocalypse?
Oh. Well, oh god, right, okay, so okay, they're not made of flesh, so they aren't going to be taken down that easy, right?
That's right.
So, okay, here's a question back to you, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but are they solar powered, or like where do they get their power from?
So yes, they're solar powered. Yeah, let's go with that. That's where they start from.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I can't exactly blow up the sun. That's good.
yeah, without massive resources.
God. Okay, so I mean,
but you personally, you know, you don't have to take it upon yourself to bring down the robot empire. Like say if you're at home, right, and then on the TV it turns out that there's a robot outbreak, robot takeover. What do? Do you stay in your flat or do you flee?
I would. My flat is pretty dark on the sunniest of days, so that could play to my advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's in there.
Yeah, somewhere underground, I think. Somewhere underground. I think somewhere that has like a plentiful water source. That's not too far from like a supermarket, or like somewhere, I don't know, a farm or something where I can get like crops from. I guess. I suppose you need to think about what you need to survive. I'm also asthmatic, so that could be a problem once all the world's inhalers run out.
Yeah, I'd stop by a pharmacy before you head out to a farm.
So maybe underground wouldn't work because there might be mold and stuff down there, and that wreaks havoc with asthmatic people. Yeah. So I guess if I was taking a cue from Killtopia, it would be something like, it depends on like what year this is. If it's like present day, then I'm buggered, but in Killtopia, there's a character in issue 2 that has an EMP rifle. and
Right.
obviously that destroys anything electronic. So if that existed, that technology, that would be cool. But if it doesn't, it'd have to be somewhere underground, lots of water, like a hydroelectric dam or something.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So
Because it's always gonna perpetuate power, and so the lights will stay on. And I'm gonna go with that. But it needs to be near a Boots the Chemist, which has like a lot of inhalers, and I don't know, some place that sells pizza, because that's like, who could live without that?
Excellent. So we need a hydroelectric dam that has a pharmacist and a Pizza Express.
I'm not asking for much, let's be honest.
No. Well, those are the essentials, Dave, right? So we've made it to this hydroelectric dam that has a pharmacy and a Pizza Express, or whichever pizza restaurant that you prefer. I don't mind. So you kind of gathered a group together, and the subject of comics comes up, and everybody's trying to reminisce, and they're wondering, what's the first comic you remember enjoying?
The first one I can remember enjoying is still my favorite one of all time, and it's Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson. I'm sure people have heard, like, I've got so fed up with me talking about the series, but it's one of those ones that, it was almost like serendipity when I read it, because I first read it when I was in my first year at university. I was studying journalism, and my flatmate at the time, Rhiannon, she said, "Hey, I've got this comic you might like. It's about journalism. You're doing a journalism course, hence have a read." She had all the collected volumes, and we're talking like, oh god, it must have been 2003, I think, 2002. And I read them back then, and yeah, dude, my mind was just so blown. There's this like gonzo street journalist like taking down a corrupt presidency with his words, weaponizing his words, kind of thing. It's almost like futuristic Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter S. Thompson style, hitting the streets, bringing down corruption. It's hilarious. It's like such a crazy world. And I mean, in that world as well, everyone in it is addicted to feeds. They all watch videos online, and they're addicted to breaking news and viral stuff. And this is before any of those things really took hold in the world.
It's quite a prediction, isn't it?
Yeah, I sort of, in a weird way, kind of liken it a bit to Nathan Barley. I don't know if you've ever seen Nathan Barley, the Charlie Brooker, Chris Morris, short-lived Channel 4 comedy show. I highly recommend it.
That.
I think there was like 6 episodes ever, and actually has an early appearance by a very young Benedict Cumberbatch in a very small cameo.
Yeah, it's everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. But that is basically about the rise of hipster culture in London, and it predicted so much about people wanting to be YouTube famous, sort of fads and weird fashion trends and strange slang, and the two things are very close in that regard, predicting things that would later come to pass. But yeah, Transmetropolitan for me, I just love the world, and you can kind of see a lot of that in Killtopia, with like the detailed backgrounds and the city feeling kind of alive, and that purely did come from Transmetropolitan. It's just the writing as well, right? So especially when Spider Jerusalem is writing a column, and he's commenting on the world, the writing in those articles inside the comic are just, it's effortless, and I'm so like, I so wish I could get to that level one day. It's phenomenal. I don't, have you read much of it yourself, man?
No, I actually haven't.
Dude.
Because I ever since you've mentioned it, because I have heard you mention Transmetropolitan before, and I've been meaning to get around to reading it, but my reading list has massively grown since I started this podcast. So, I will get around to it though. I will get around to it, definitely.
No, dude. I mean, yeah, I highly recommend it. It's there's a lot of it there's a lot of stuff in there, despite when it was made, that is so relevant to today. There's lies, fake news, politicians just lying through their teeth to the public, mass protests, civil unrest. Like, there's so much now. It's almost come back around into relevancy again.
Yeah.
So I'd say now, actually, in the era of Trump and all that, it's by far the best time to get back into it. I could go on, but
Oh yeah,
be here all
definitely.
night.
But it's
But
quite
it's
all right.
class, yeah.
Amazing. And so the group move the conversation on to what's the funniest or the comic that made you laugh out loud the most?
I've got to say, Preacher.
Great.
It is just the most absurd, like ridiculous, like dark
Crazy.
comedy, like thing. Like, I can't. I mean, there's so. I don't even know where to begin. There's so many funny bits. Like Her Star, the villain, is one of the funniest. Like, he comes across as threatening. Very rarely. Most of the time, he's just there to be laughed at, and he's just a subject of like talking tough, but actually just being the subject of ridicule throughout the whole comic. And the guy just doesn't catch a break. And the character Arseface is hilarious. He becomes this like overnight.
I mean, it just starts with the name, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have like things that aren't even the TV show. You've got like the detective agency, the sexual agents, I think they're called, where one guy's just a private investigator, the other guy shags people, and it's like, what is the point of your business? How does this detective agency work? This makes no sense. It's one of the funniest things I've ever read. It's so dark, and the TV show's getting better. I think it had a bit of a dip in season 2, but it's kind of getting back on track. I don't know like how much of that you've seen as well, but it's.
I saw the first half of season 1, I think, and then something else came up, and I haven't got back to it.
Yeah, I mean it's quite different. I mean, it's like it doesn't follow the plot much at all, but in season 3 it kind of started to follow again, and it's getting back on track. And I'm hoping it keeps on going. It doesn't get cancelled like prematurely, because like I think where season 4 is going, there's some really cool stuff coming up. But definitely Preacher. I laugh every time I think about some certain scenes, and it's great.
Fantastic. And so the next subject that comes up is what's the saddest or most upsetting comic you've read?
Oh, a few actually spring to mind. It might be either. I mentioned Low quite a lot. I don't know if you've ever read Low by Rick Remender and Greg Ticini, but it's almost like it's quite a tragic story. A tale of like family loss and just trying to make it in this world that's just like I don't know if you know much about the premise, but it's essentially like the ozone layer has gone through pollution, so Earth is being bombarded with these like radioactive sun rays, and everything on the surface world is uninhabitable. So mankind lives in cities under the sea, but pretty much from the very start of Volume 1, like this family gets torn apart. It's not even a spoiler. It just is the crux of the story. This family gets torn apart and strewn across this world, and the whole arc is about them trying to find themselves again and get back together and just endure like terrible, terrible things. The main story is about hope. The concept of hope, that no matter how dark things get, there's always this little glimmer of like hope and sort of possibility. And I won't say too much more, but I'd highly recommend it, especially if like anyone listening has played and enjoyed BioShock. There's quite a lot of parallels. There's like big mechanized suits, a bit like the Big Daddies. There's like underwater biospheres and stuff like that. And it's really good, but it gets pretty bleak at points.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a story, and were there any particular moments when you were reading it that you felt, wow, that's actually really upsetting?
Yeah, there's a few character deaths I really can't spoil who or how or when. Yeah. But there's a few deaths where you think it's a bit like that Game of Thrones thing, right? Don't get too attached to anyone because you just don't know. There's a few heel turns as well. There's a few bits where characters turn kind of bad and disagree and go their separate ways, and you kind of just want to see everyone, like, and humanity as a whole in this world, just get along and work out this problem, because they're all running out of oxygen in these underwater cities. But they've almost all given up. They're just like partying and shagging each other and doing drugs, and they just don't care. But if they all just got together rallied around a common goal, they could work it out. But everything is just so hopeless. But yeah, I'd say there's a few character deaths that I can't talk about, obviously. But
yeah, but that just kind of like hit you
yeah,
emotionally.
I would say so, because their characters certainly you think are going to pull through, but then they don't, and you're like, oh, wow. now I'm just really depressed now.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I kind of I've had this conversation with a few other guests just about the importance of being upset over a comic, or just a story is it's important because it means that you're kind of invested in it, and also it kind of develops your empathy, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, right? And I'm not just saying this to be kind of like all tough and all that. But when I watch movies, I never get upset because I think I kind of register that there's an upsetting thing happening on screen. But there's this weird thing, and it always happens with me. I'm always constantly telling myself it's just a film. It's not real.
Right.
However, with books and comics, I guess because you can't actually hear the character's voice, you kind of have an idea of how they sound and how they. I always read comics and kind of like I kind of imagine how it would look moving. I don't know if that makes any sense or if anyone else does that.
Yeah.
Because it's like when I write my scripts. I've never really revealed many of my scripts online, but I kind of write them a bit like a movie script. Like I kind of talk about in camera angles and we see this happening. And although I'm fully aware it's a static medium, right? But I guess maybe because you kind of your head, you let the comic into your headspace more. You have to work a bit harder to cognitively kind of imagine it and sort of feel it. I think that's why maybe they resonate a bit more. But of course, everyone's different. Some people might read comics and just completely break down. But I would say comics and books definitely resonate more than film, because I'm just like, oh, they're actors that I know. I recognize. This character hasn't really died in this film because he's just played by this actor, and it's the silly little thing in the back of my mind that stops me from getting that invested. But yeah, I get why people do though.
Yeah, definitely, and that makes a lot of sense. And so the conversation with your group, your survivors group, moves on to the scariest, almost horrifying comic that you've read.
I'm gonna choose one that's a bit. I don't know. You might not think it was the scariest. Actually, it's not even a horror comic, really. Probably Kill or Be Killed. For the reason. So the reason is, I've never read a comic book, where I have so profoundly put myself in the shoes of the protagonist. Right. So this whole thing. I mean, the base concept is this character is told by a demon, if you don't kill one person every month, I'll eat your soul, right? Normal person, has never even held a gun, so you kind of put yourself in the shoes of this character and you think, he has to start figuring out, okay, how do I get a clean gun that can't be traced? Who am I going to even choose to kill? Like, who deserves to die? What do I do with the body? So all these like practical little steps that you would have to think about if you were trying to get away with murder. And then you start to like put yourself in that position and you're like, I wouldn't have a clue what to do. Like if my life really depended on it, or like the fate of the world depended on it, like it's just such a foreign concept. Like I just
it's a horrifying concept, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, and then it's almost like when the first kill in the book happens, I won't spoil anything, of course. It's then like, cool, you're safe for now. Who's next? And then you're like, oh my God, this isn't going to end. And you're like, it's just this constant pressure. And I find, especially with horror movies, I was talking about not getting too emotionally invested in sad things, but see, like a horror movie, I don't get so scared by jump scares, right? Or because I mean, in films these days, they're really obviously telegraphed now. Anyway, they have that little violin string, that wing kind of sound effect as the ghost runs across the screen. It's like, oh, come on. I get more freaked out by situations like that are just so horrible to imagine being in.
Yeah.
Like a good example is, I don't know, like a character being trapped in a room that behind a locked door with no food or anything and no means of escape. It's like, oh my God, what a horrible way to die. That's the kind of thing that really gets under my skin.
Yeah. Like Wolf Creek. Have you ever seen Wolf Creek?
Yeah.
That is horrifying. Like the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's kind of based on a true story, I think. But that is just, I was really scared of that film. Sorry.
So there's even the concept, right, of like escaping that situation that you're talking about in that film. Again, like no spoilers.
Yeah.
Then you have to factor in they're in the middle of the Australian outback with no water, crazy heat, miles from civilization.
Yeah.
That's terrifying in itself. It's like, oh my god.
Let alone a nutter chasing after you with a knife.
But that I'd say Kill or Be Killed for that reason, because I actually really put myself in that position and was like, I would just give up. I wouldn't be able to kill someone. Like I couldn't. Yeah. Like in all good, I'm kind of glad I'm admitting that on a live recording.
Yes.
Just in case.
It's good to admit those things. Just so you know, I couldn't kill somebody. I'm not a serial killer.
Yeah. Honest.
I'm glad that we've cleared that up, Dave. That's an exclusive. Fantastic. So the group move on to the next subject, which is what's the most meaningful comic to you?
I probably can't pick Transmetropolitan again. That would be kind of cheap, I guess.
That's fine too, but you can have two.
All right, okay, so definitely Transmet, because it's informed so much of like my writing and just where I'm at basically now. The most meaningful beyond that, I'm going to pick another Rick Remender one if that's okay. Tokyo Ghost.
Great.
I think that is one of the best modern comics I've read. We're talking like last 5 years or so, right? It's only 10 issues long, but it sort of it came before the concept of Killtopia was really solidified, and I read it and I thought, this is such a good like futuristic dystopia. I wouldn't even call it cyberpunk. It's more, I'm not sure what I would call it, but its vision of like a technologically superior Los Angeles is just so tangible. Like there's it's overcome by pollution. It's like there's death car races. All the elite are trying to find a new city to live in because they realize they've just destroyed where they're staying now. All the stuff in Japan is great. Like it sort of came at a time where the idea of Killtopia was coming, and then I thought, that's like someone else has kind of already got there first, which is annoying. But it just sort of almost, I don't know, reinforced the idea that, hey, maybe people do want to read a story like Killtopia. And I mean, R1 is about a completely different situation, but it's sort of like encouraged me that maybe I was on the right track, that there was a market for cyberpunk. And it's a weird thing because cyberpunk still wasn't that big a deal when our first Kickstarter launched, but it was just starting to come back. You had Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner sequel, Altered Carbon, stuff like that, and those things were just starting to creep into the periphery. And it's like, I think we got incredibly lucky with the timing, though. Like, there's no way we could have predicted that. I'm thankful for it, of course.
You're right, mate.
But
it's well deserved as well.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I mean, it's weird now as well because through the comic, we've discovered a lot of cyberpunk groups like forums, Reddit communities, Facebook communities.
Reddit is massive with those sorts of things,
Yeah, it's huge, man. Like, we actually got talking with a few moderators from some of those groups on Facebook for the last campaign, because we didn't want to just go on there and start spamming our stuff. That's not polite. So we got to know these guys a bit more, and we're talking to them again now about the Killtopia 2 stuff, and they're super sound. And some of the stuff they share, like the artwork, that it's just fan art as well. But the amount of detail that goes into these things and these cool images of like, mechanized humans and cool neon backdrops. It's just like such a passionate community that really care that, and are really happy that this is coming back in a big way. So for that reason, I think Tokyo Ghost, because I think it was almost reassurance that, cool, someone else is making a cyberpunky kind of comic. There's probably an appetite for this. Let's crack on. And it's a great story as well.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And so the next question that pops up is, what's the most underrated comic?
Oh, interesting. Underrated. I'm probably going to pick something that's not that underrated, because I tend not to look too much at what's popular. Like, I just mean that in like I'm pretty much on a bit of a social media self-imposed hiatus right now, where I tweet a lot, I post a lot, but I don't really read through the feeds much because for me, I get a bit too like down a rabbit hole with it, where I could sit there for hours like just scrolling and talking to people.
For sure.
So I'm not sure what. So I'm probably going to pick something that is popular, but I would say maybe Outcast or Paper Girls.
Great. Yeah.
And yeah, those two could be massively popular. I'm not sure, but maybe Paper Girls actually, because certainly no one in my friend circles I know of is reading that. But that's one of the like craziest off the wall. Like for the first like volume, I was just reading it like, what is going on here? Nothing here. Like there's no real clear plot or like clear arc. But do you know what? It was done in a way that was really compelling. It might have put some people off. Because it felt to me a bit like Lost, and by that I mean like a lot of questions, not a lot of answers.
A lot of mystery box.
yeah, totally. But the art style was cool. I loved the kind of Goonies, like 80s kind of style of this band of kids going around. There's a foul-mouthed one, the one that smokes, the sort of punky one, the good-natured one. Perfect. I mean, it would have been a perfect like Steven Spielberg film back in like 1985 or something. And yeah, no, I think that's really underrated. I mean, I think it takes a bit of work. Like you have to just put up with it and buy into its whole mystique and drip feeding information. But I think if you do that, like it really becomes a bit of a roller coaster, and just embrace the madness of it because it is crazy. Yeah. So I'm going to say
you got to do those sorts of stories. You just got to embrace the craziness. And that's kind of what they're there for. Yeah.
And I have probably picked something really popular, but I certainly don't know anyone personally that has said they're reading it. So that's going to be my pick, I think.
Bingo. There you go. And for you, what is the best comic of all time?
I'll probably say Transmetropolitan again.
For sure, mate.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, it's just like, it just, again, struck such a resonant sort of chord with me. And I can go back and read that so many times and just like spot a new background detail or something I didn't pick up on in a sort of visual gag or something. It's just so dense with every page is just so dense with stuff going on. And again, it's in terms of writing, it's what I can only sort of aspire to be because it's just like it's off the charts. Try to think if there's any other close.
Yeah, any notable mentions?
Let me think now. I mean, Preacher would be up there as well, of course. I'm quite fond of Fables, actually.
Right.
I really like the idea of all of these. New York has been inhabited by refugees from this fairy tale world who've all been driven out. So they're trying to make a new living in New York. It's a genius concept. Absolutely genius, and I love the characters in it and the kind of mystery of who the adversary is and what's going on there and stuff. I really liked Fables. Again, maybe that could be a candidate for the underrated one because I certainly haven't heard many people talking about it lately. I mean, I'm aware it's finished now, but if anyone listening hasn't read Fables, like I highly recommend that as well. But yeah. I could pick loads actually. I'm too nice. I don't just want to single out one.
It's quite all right. Talking about singling out, unfortunately, even though you've managed to hide yourself in this hydroelectric dam with a pharmacy and a Pizza Express, the robots have found you, and they're starting to crack into the hydroelectric dam. Now, you and your group are going to manage to run away, but you can't take all of these comics with you. You're only allowed to take one. Which one do you take?
Oh, I think we all know the answer by now, but I'm gonna pretend that one isn't in my official roster, if that's okay. Let's just pretend Transmet isn't one of them. I'd probably take Low.
Great.
Because again, it's an epic story. Like it's so. Like the planning out of the whole arc must have been so intricate, and because it takes place over decades,
Yeah.
So it's quite epic in that regard. Greg Ticini's art is also just stunning. I could look at that all day as well, and would love to get some framed pages or something. But yeah, those books are just so masterful in their artwork, just the writing. So I'd probably say I take if I'm allowed to take all 4 volumes of Low that I own so far, that would be great.
Fantastic. So you got all 4 volumes of Low, and what weapon, tool, or useful item are you going to take with you to fight the robots?
Let me think. There's a few daft answers going around in my head, and I'm not sure which ones are applicable.
Let's get them out there.
So a can
Sky's the limit, Dave.
So let's say like a multi-pack of black spray paint to spray over their solar panels.
Nice. I love
so
that.
They can't get the sunlight, but then again, the solar panels might not. They might be resistant to spray paint. I'm not sure. So some sort of water-based weapon, like I don't know, like a fire truck that has like a big tank of water, so I can hopefully they're not waterproof. Hopefully.
Not entirely. Yeah.
I'm going to say a pizza cutter because I need to find somewhere else that has a Pizza Express.
Bingo.
And God help us if there isn't anything to cut the pizza with.
Exactly.
I don't know.
You're going to be completely stuck.
I'm reaching now.
I love that. But that could double up as a weapon if you got like a, the big ones that they get in the restaurants, the kind of the seesaw type ones. You could use that as kind of like a weapon to decapitate robots and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, cut their wires or something, sever a few oil pipes here and there, yeah.
That type of thing. I think that would be pretty rad. Awesome. So you've got your huge pizza cutter, your copies of Low, and you're gonna head out into the apocalypse outside of your hydroelectric dam. Well, and good luck to you, Dave, for your survival.
I think I'm gonna need it.
I'm afraid so, mate. But as kind of Low suggests, if you all band together, you can overcome anything. Maybe.
That's it. A little sliver of hope. That's all you need.
That's right. Fantastic. Well, Dave Cook, thank you so much for your time and coming on to Comics for the Apocalypse.
No, thank you so much. It's been a blast, man. Thank you so much. And can I just say this is such a great format for a podcast as well.
Thank you, much appreciated. And for the listeners, one last time, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter. It's Dave S. Cook. Or you can get us at www.cardsharkcomics.com. And lastly, Facebook /Killtopia comic.
Fantastic. And I kind of know the answer to my last question, but what future projects do you have coming up?
So there's Killtopia 2, which is obviously coming out. Hitting Kickstarter March 1st. We're hoping we're gonna launch it around about Thought Bubble again, like we did before. I'm also working on another comic, which I won't tell you too much about, but it's basically a dedication to my favorite genre of video games, which is the side-scrolling beat 'em up genre.
Great.
Streets
of Rage.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's basically the main influence.
Great. Love it. I'm looking forward to that, mate.
That may not come until next year, but because we're just kind of mood boarding it and sort of I'm planning it in art just now. We've also got issue 3 of Vessels coming out on Kickstarter later this year, and issue 4 of Bust as well. So quite a busy year for us, actually.
Very busy.
But very excited to be doing it.
As am I. I'm looking forward to seeing all of that. Everybody go check out Dave Cook on Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else that you can find him. Again, Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. Take care, mate, and see you soon.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye. Thanks again to Dave for being on Comics for the Apocalypse. You absolutely wrecked it, mate. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe it helps make other people aware of the show as well. If you'd like to check out Dave's work or follow him on social media, those links are in the show notes, along with all of our own links to the various areas of the internet. And finally, as long as the apocalypse doesn't come to pass in the next week, I'll see you next Monday. Bye for now.